The red alert siren woke Governor Frank Miller from a restless sleep. He stumbled to his desk and pressed the communication button with shaking fingers. "Report," he said, his voice still rough from sleep. "Sir, we have multiple unknown ships entering our system." "They're not responding to hails," said Lieutenant Amy Rogers, her face pale on the screen. Frank felt his stomach drop. New Montana was the largest human colony, home to over 3 million people, but it was also the farthest from Earth. And if the Galactic Concord's promises meant anything, it should have been protected. "Have you contacted the Concord patrol ships?" he asked, already knowing the answer. They jumped out of the system an hour ago, sir," without explanation. Frank closed his eyes for a moment. 30 years. That's how long Earth had been part of the Great Galactic Concord, a collection of alien species who claimed to value peace and cooperation. Earth had been so proud to join, had followed all their rules, paid all their fees, and settled only in the areas they were allowed. "Get me the defense minister," Frank said, pulling on his uniform jacket. By the time Frank reached the colony's command center, the situation had become clear. The unknown ships belonged to the Vaxari Empire, a species from the Outer Rim known for their aggressive expansion, and they had already attacked 3 smaller human colonies in the past week. "Where is the Concord fleet?" Frank demanded as he entered the room. They promised protection. Defense Minister Judy Wells looked up from her station. Her eyes told Frank everything before she spoke. "The Concord Council voted not to intervene. They say our colonies are too remote to justify military action." The room fell silent. Frank stared at the tactical display, showing 12 large Vaxari warships entering orbit around New Montana. "So they've abandoned us," he said quietly. "We're receiving a transmission from the Vaxari flagship," called out the communications officer. The main screen flickered, and a Vaxari appeared. They were reptilian in appearance, with gray-green scales and slitted yellow eyes. The translator converted its hissing speech into English. "Attention, human colony. This territory now belongs to the glorious Vaxari Empire. You have 48 hours to surrender. All humans will be processed and assigned appropriate labor positions in service to the Empire. Resistance will result in orbital bombardment." The screen went dark. "Can we fight them?" Frank asked, turning to Judy. She shook her head. "We have a defense force of 5,006 orbital platforms. They have 12 warships and what looks like 50,000 troops preparing to land. And no help is coming." Frank thought of the families who had come to New Montana looking for a fresh start, the farms and cities they had built over the past 20 years. He thought of his own wife and son, probably still asleep at home. "Evacuate as many as we can to the mountain bunkers," he ordered, "and get me a direct line to Earth. They need to know what's happening." As his staff rushed to carry out orders, Frank received another call. It was Susan Baker, Earth's ambassador to the Concord. "Frank, I just came from an emergency council session," she said, her voice tight with anger. "I tried everything, but they voted against intervention. They're claiming it's a regional conflict that doesn't threaten Concord security." "We followed all their rules, Susan. We settled where they told us to settle." "I know," she replied. "Several council members actually suggested we should have known the risks of settling in that sector. As if this is our fault." Frank looked out the window at the colony he had helped build. The morning sun was rising over the capital city, its light catching on the windows of buildings filled with people who had no idea that their lives were about to change forever. "We've been betrayed," he said quietly. "Get the message to Earth. The Concord has abandoned us." In the sky above, the first Vaxari landing ships began their descent. Susan Baker stood tall in the grand chamber of the Galactic Concord, her blue diplomatic uniform stark against the colorful robes of the alien representatives. She had spent the last 6 hours pleading Earth's case before the Council, and now waited for their final decision. "The Council has voted," announced the Tellurian chairperson, his 4 eyes blinking slowly. "By a margin of 14 to 6, We maintain our position of non-intervention in the Vaxari expansion into human territory. Susan clenched her fists at her sides. Expansion? They are killing our people. 3 colonies have already fallen. Millions of humans are dead or enslaved. The Tellarian raised a hand for silence. The Concord must consider the broader peace. Human colonies were established in a contested region, despite our warnings of potential instability. We settled exactly where the Concord assigned us. Susan couldn't keep the anger from her voice now. You promised protection. An elderly Moxian counselor leaned forward. Ambassador Baker, please understand our position. The Vaxari control significant resource worlds. A full-scale war would destabilize trade throughout the sector. Susan looked around the chamber, at the alien faces watching her, with expressions ranging from sympathy to indifference. She had spent years learning to read alien body language, to navigate the complex politics of the Concord. Now she saw the truth clearly. Humanity was expendable. I understand perfectly, she said coldly. Human lives are worth less than your profit margins. She stormed out of the council chambers, ignoring the murmurs that followed her. In the privacy of the Earth Embassy, she contacted home with the devastating news. They won't help us, Madam President, she reported to the grim-faced woman on the screen. We're on our own. President Laura Daniels nodded slowly. Then it's time. I'm authorizing Operation Last Resort. Are you sure? Susan asked. Once we do this, there's no going back. The Concord will claim we violated a dozen treaties. What good are treaties with those who abandon you? President Daniels responded. Do what you need to do there. We'll handle things on our end. On New Montana, Major Peter Garcia crouched behind a makeshift barricade, watching Vaxari ground troops advance through the outskirts of the capital city. The colony's defense force had been fighting for 36 hours straight, trying to buy time for civilians to reach the underground bunkers in the mountains. How many got out? He asked the bloodied sergeant beside him. Maybe 60% of the city, she replied, checking her rifle's charge. The Vaxari cut off the eastern evacuation route 3 hours ago. Peter nodded grimly. Their orders were to hold for as long as possible, then fall back to protect the bunkers. It was a suicide mission, but every hour they delayed the Vaxari meant more civilians reaching safety. His communication unit buzzed. It was Governor Miller, calling from the emergency command center in the mountains. Major, we just received word from Earth. Hold your position for 6 more hours if possible. Help is coming. Peter frowned. Sir, the Concord voted against intervention. Not the Concord, Miller replied, his voice tight with emotion. Earth is sending ships. Earth doesn't have warships, Peter said, ducking as energy fire struck nearby. The Concord treaties. Apparently there's a lot we weren't told, Miller said. Just hold on, Major. As the communication ended, Peter looked up at the sky, where Vaxari ships circled like vultures. Earth sending ships. It seemed impossible. The Concord had strictly controlled Earth's space capability since they joined, limiting humans to small patrol vessels and transport ships. Sir, called his sergeant, they're bringing up heavy weapons. Peter turned his attention back to the battle. 6 more hours seemed like eternity. But for the first time since the invasion began, he felt something unexpected. Hope. In space, aboard the Vaxari command ship, Supreme General Krail received troubling news from his sensor officer. Multiple warp signatures detected at the edge of the system, the officer reported. Configuration unknown. Concord vessels? Krail asked, his scaled tail twitching with irritation. No, General. The energy signatures are unfamiliar. Krail moved to the viewing screen, watching as strange ships appeared from warp. They were smaller than Concord vessels, sleek and dark against the stars. And there were many of them. Whose ships are these? He demanded. The answer came moments later, as a transmission cut through their communication channels. Attention Vaxari forces. This is Admiral Olivia Winters of the Earth Defense Fleet. You were warned once to leave human space. There will not be a second warning. Admiral Olivia Winters stood on the bridge of the EDF Defiance, watching as her fleet of 120 warships moved into formation. For 15 years, she had commanded the secret Ghost Fleet, ships that officially didn't exist. Hidden in the asteroid belt of the Sol system, the fleet had been built in secret, piece by piece, in violation of every treaty Earth had signed with the Galactic Concord. All ships report ready for combat. Admiral, said her second-in-command, Captain Ryan Ford. Olivia nodded. Signal the fleet. We jump in 5 minutes. She looked around at her crew, men and women who had trained in secret, far from the prying eyes of alien observers. Only the highest levels of Earth's government knew about the Ghost Fleet. Even most of Earth's military thought they were just working on special research projects. Do you think the Vaxeri will surrender when they see us? Ryan asked quietly. No, Olivia replied. They've never faced humans in battle. They think we're weak because the Concord treats us like children. She smiled thinly. They're about to learn differently. The Defiance was the pride of the fleet, built with stolen alien technology mixed with human innovation. The Concord had carefully restricted what technology they shared with Earth, claiming humans weren't ready for advanced weapons or faster-than-light combat systems. But humans had always been good at learning by watching, and Earth's spies had been very busy for 30 years. 2 minutes to jump, called the navigation officer. Olivia thought about the colonies, about the people fighting and dying while the Concord debated. She had family on New Montana, a brother and his children who had moved there 5 years ago. She didn't know if they were still alive. We're receiving the latest tactical data from New Montana's Defense Force, Ryan reported. The Vaxeri have landed troops in 3 major cities and have 6 destroyers in low orbit. Send it to all ships, Olivia ordered. I want precision strikes on those destroyers the moment we arrive. No mistakes. The bridge fell silent as the countdown continued. This would be humanity's first real space battle. Everything they had trained for, everything they had built in secret, was about to be tested. Jump in 3, 2, 1. The fleet vanished from the Sol system and reappeared at the edge of New Montana's star system. Immediately, Olivia saw the Vaxeri ships on her display, 12 larger vessels in high orbit, and the 6 destroyers Ryan had mentioned, positioned over the colony cities. The Vaxeri have detected us, reported the sensor officer. Their fleet is moving to respond. Launch fighters, Olivia ordered. Battle Group Alpha, target those destroyers. Battle Group Beta, move to engage their capital ships. Small, agile fighter craft shot from the larger human ships. Unlike conventional fighters used by the Concord, these were equipped with miniaturized warp drives, technology the Concord had declared impossible for ships that small. They're trying to hail us, said the communications officer. Open the channel, Olivia responded. The face of a Vaxeri commander appeared on screen. His yellow eyes widened at the sight of a human in command. This is Supreme General Kral of the Vaxeri Empire. Your presence is a violation of Concord treaties. Earth is not permitted to maintain warships of this class. I'm not concerned with Concord treaties, General, Olivia replied coldly. You are attacking human worlds. Earth does not recognize your claim to our territory, and we demand your immediate withdrawal. Kral's scales bristled. The Concord has acknowledged our right to expand into this region. Your colonies were warned. The Concord doesn't speak for Earth anymore, Olivia said. You have 1 hour to begin evacuation of your ground forces. Any Vaxeri ships remaining in this system after that time will be destroyed. She cut the transmission before he could respond. He won't retreat, Ryan said. No, Olivia agreed. But now we have witnesses that we offered terms. She turned to the tactical display, watching as the first wave of Earth fighters closed in on the Vaxeri destroyers. Begin the attack. Across New Montana, humans looked up as the night sky lit up with flashes of light. The battle for their world had begun. Major Peter Garcia couldn't believe his eyes. From his position on the outskirts of New Montana's capital, he watched as bright flashes lit up the night sky. Space combat. And based on the frantic communications from the Vaxari ground forces, it wasn't going well for the invaders. "Major, look," shouted Sergeant Kelly Barnes, pointing upward. One of the Vaxari destroyers that had been hovering over the city was falling, its engines dead, atmosphere trailing from its hull as it slowly drifted toward the planet's gravity well. "All units, prepare to counterattack," Peter ordered into his comm unit. "Focus on their command units." The confused Vaxari ground forces were receiving contradictory orders from their ships. Some were digging in, while others were rushing back to their landing craft. Peter's troops took advantage of the chaos, pushing forward for the first time since the invasion began. In orbit, the battle raged with unexpected ferocity. Supreme General Krull watched in disbelief as another of his destroyers exploded under the concentrated fire of Earth's fighters. "Impossible," he hissed. "How are their small craft jumping within the battle space?" His tactical officer had no answer. The human fighters were using some kind of localized warp technology that allowed them to appear and disappear across the battlefield, striking from unexpected angles and vanishing before Vaxari weapons could lock on. "The EDF Defiance is approaching," General reported his second-in-command. "Admiral Winters is requesting your surrender." Krull slammed his clawed hand on the command console. "The Vaxari do not surrender. Bring all weapons to bear on their flagship." But even as his cruiser turned to engage the Defiance, two human warships appeared on either side, their weapons tearing through his shields with unexpected power. "Sir, our shields are failing," cried his tactical officer. On the Defiance, Olivia Winters watched with satisfaction as the Vaxari flagship's shields collapsed. "Target their engines and weapons," she ordered. "Let's see if the general is ready to talk now." The precision strikes left Krull's ship crippled but intact. 7 of his 12 ships were already destroyed or disabled, while the Earth fleet had lost only 4 vessels. "Admiral," Ryan Ford reported, "we're getting distress calls from the colony. There are still Vaxari ground forces attacking civilian shelters in the mountains." Olivia's expression hardened. "Launch the dropships. It's time for the ground teams to show what they can do." Across the colony, Earth's special forces began to land in sleek black dropships. Unlike the regular defense forces, these soldiers wore powered combat armor, another technology the Concord had refused to share with primitive humans. In the mountain bunkers, Governor Frank Miller received the news with shocked relief. Earth actually sent a fleet. How is this possible? His aide shook her head in wonder. "I don't know, sir, but they're winning." A soldier burst into the command center. "Governor, we have Earth troops landing outside. They're clearing out the Vaxari forces." Frank rushed to the bunker entrance. Through the reinforced windows, he could see black armored soldiers efficiently eliminating the Vaxari troops that had been trying to breach the bunker doors. Their movements were precise and coordinated, their weapons far more advanced than anything the colony's defense force had. "Open communication with their commander," Frank ordered. A moment later, the face of a woman appeared on his screen. "Governor Miller. I'm Captain Natalie Wright, 1st Special Combat Division. Admiral Winters sent us to secure the civilian shelters." "Thank God," Frank breathed. "But how? Earth doesn't have military technology like this." Captain Wright smiled slightly. "That's what the Concord thinks. We'll explain everything once we secure the area." In orbit, Supreme General Krull finally accepted the inevitable. With his flagship crippled and most of his fleet destroyed, he opened a channel to the Defiance. "Admiral Winters," he said stiffly, "I request terms for the withdrawal of my remaining forces." "Unconditional surrender, General," Olivia replied calmly. "All your ships and ground forces will stand down immediately. Any Vaxari vessel attempting to flee will be destroyed." Krull's scales darkened with rage and humiliation. "The Vaxari Empire will not forget this, human. This is just one battle. Then we look forward to the next one," Olivia said. You have 10 minutes to signal your surrender, or we resume the attack. As the transmission ended, Ryan turned to her. You think they'll spread the word about what happened here? Olivia nodded. That's exactly what I'm counting on. The galaxy needs to know that humans aren't as helpless as they thought. News of Earth's hidden fleet spread through the galactic concord like wildfire. In the Grand Council chambers, representatives from 24 alien species argued loudly over the shocking development. This is an outrageous violation of treaty, shouted the Moxian counselor, his tentacles waving in agitation. Humans agreed to limit their military capabilities when they joined the Concord. Ambassador Susan Baker stood calmly in the center of the chamber, facing the angry aliens with a steady gaze. She had returned not to beg for help, but to make a statement. The treaties became void the moment you abandoned our colonies, she said firmly. Earth acted to protect its citizens when the Concord refused to honor its commitments. The Tellarian chairperson leaned forward. You deliberately deceived the Concord. These ships must have been built over many years. Yes, Susan agreed without hesitation. Earth has never fully trusted the promises of aliens. History has proven us right. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some counselors were outraged, but others watched Susan with newfound respect. The Vaxari Empire has filed a formal complaint, continued the chairperson. They claim unprovoked aggression by Earth forces. Susan laughed, the sound sharp in the tense chamber. Unprovoked. They attacked our colonies and killed millions of our people while the Concord watched and did nothing. She pulled up images on the main display. Burning human cities, civilian casualties, Vaxari troops rounding up human prisoners. This is what your inaction allowed, she said coldly. Earth will no longer ask permission to defend itself. As the council erupted into another round of arguments, a message reached Susan's personal device. She smiled slightly as she read it. 3 more Vaxari-occupied colonies had just been liberated by Earth forces. On New Montana, the cleanup from the battle continued. Major Peter Garcia walked through the capital city with Governor Frank Miller, surveying the damage. Earth troops were helping rebuild key infrastructure and providing medical care to the wounded. I still can't believe it, Peter said, watching Earth engineers repair a power station with technology he'd never seen before. All this time, Earth was preparing for war while telling us they were following Concord restrictions. Frank nodded. I just spoke with Admiral Winters. Apparently, Earth has been developing military technology in secret for decades. The government never trusted the Concord's promises of protection. Smart move, Peter replied, thinking of the friends he'd lost in the initial invasion. Their conversation was interrupted by Captain Natalie Wright, who approached with a data tablet. Governor, Major, she greeted them. I have news from Earth Command. The Vaxari have withdrawn from 2 more colony worlds after our forces appeared in those systems. It seems they're not eager for another fight. Frank smiled for the first time in days. So we're winning. The tide is turning, Natalie confirmed. But there's more. Several Concord species have privately contacted Earth, offering support against the Vaxari. Now they want to help, Peter asked bitterly. It's not entirely altruistic, Natalie explained. Our intelligence shows the Vaxari were planning to use human territory as a staging ground for attacks deeper into Concord space. We're essentially fighting the Concord's war for them. In the Vaxari Command Center on their homeworld, Supreme Commander Zox reviewed the disaster unfolding across the frontier. 3 defeats in as many days, with more human fleets appearing in other systems where Vaxari forces were vulnerable. How did we not know about these Earth ships? He demanded of his intelligence chief. The humans concealed them well, the officer replied nervously. And the Concord assured us that Earth had no significant military capability. Zox hissed in frustration. The Concord was wrong. These humans fight like nothing we've encountered before. Their ships appear and disappear across the battlefield, their weapons cut through our shields as if they weren't there. He studied the battle recordings again, watching Earth fighters execute impossible maneuvers, making micro-jumps that no Concorde or Vaxeri ship could match. "Send word to all our forces," he ordered. "Fall back to defensive positions. We need time to adapt to these human tactics." His second-in-command looked alarmed. "Fall back. The Empire has never retreated before." Zox fixed him with a cold stare. "And no Vaxeri commander has ever faced humans before. We underestimated them once. I will not make that mistake again." As Vaxeri ships began their withdrawal from human space, the galaxy watched in stunned disbelief. The species that everyone had dismissed as primitive newcomers had just defeated one of the most feared military powers in the outer regions. And Earth was just getting started. Admiral Olivia Winters stood on the bridge of the EDF Defiance, studying the tactical display of the Hartley colony system. It had been 3 weeks since the battle at New Montana, and Earth forces were now implementing the second phase of their counteroffensive. The Vaxeri were on the run, but they weren't defeated yet. "The last Vaxeri cruiser has jumped out of the system," Admiral reported Ryan Ford. "Hartley colony is secure." "Casualties?" Olivia asked. "Minimal on our side. We lost 2 fighters, and the destroyer Vigilant took heavy damage to its port section. Civilian casualties are high, though. The Vaxeri executed nearly 1,000 colonists before retreating." Olivia's face hardened. "Send in the medical teams and begin repair operations for the colony infrastructure. And get me Earth Command. We need to accelerate the timetable for the next phase." As Ryan carried out her orders, Olivia thought about how quickly things had changed. In just 3 weeks, Earth forces had liberated 5 colonies. The Vaxeri, who had expected an easy victory against abandoned humans, were now facing a fighting force with tactics and technology they couldn't counter. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Concord capital, Ambassador Susan Baker was meeting secretly with representatives from 3 Concord species, the Araxians, the Lur, and the Vulturi. Unlike the older species who dominated the council, these 3 had only joined the Concord in the last century. "My government has reviewed your evidence," said the Araxian diplomat, her feathered crest rising with concern. "These plans confirm the Vaxeri intended to use human territory as a staging ground for attacks deep into Concord space." Susan nodded. "Earth intelligence has been monitoring Vaxeri communications for years. We knew their expansion wouldn't stop with human colonies." "The Council should have acted," said the Vulturi representative, his crystalline body glimmering under the room's lights. "By abandoning your people, they have endangered us all." "Which is why we're here," Susan replied. "Earth proposes a new alliance outside the Concord structure. Joint military operations against the Vaxari, with shared technology and resources." The 3 diplomats exchanged looks. Breaking with Concord policy was a serious step. "You need us," Susan pressed on. "Earth has the will to fight and innovative tactics, but the Vaxari still outnumber us. With your help, we can end this threat once and for all." After a moment, the Araxian nodded. "The Araxian Federation will send ships to join your next offensive." The others quickly agreed. As they left to contact their governments, Susan allowed herself a small smile. The Concord had abandoned Earth, but now Earth was building its own alliances. At the Vaxeri staging world of Krell VI, Commander Nazir watched anxiously as the remnants of the invasion fleet limped into orbit. Their numbers had been cut in half, with many ships damaged beyond easy repair. "Status report," he demanded of the fleet captain. "All colonies lost." The captain replied, his scales pale with exhaustion. "The humans have technology we've never seen before. Their ships can make micro-jumps during combat. Their fighters can appear behind our vessels with no warning. The Supreme Command demands answers," Nazir said. "How could primitive humans defeat our finest ships?" "They're not primitive," the captain insisted. "Everything the Concord told us about humans was wrong. They're aggressive, inventive, and they fight like nothing I've ever seen." Their discussion was interrupted by an alarm. The sensor officer's voice shook as he reported, "Multiple warp signatures detected at the edge of the system. Energy patterns match. Human vessels. Nazir rushed to the command center window. In the distance, he could see the flashes of ships emerging from warp. Dozens of them, but some had unfamiliar configurations. The communication officer called out, "We're receiving a transmission from the lid ship." On the main screen appeared a human man in an Earth Defense Fleet uniform. "This is Captain Daniel White of the EDF Relentless. Beside me is Commander Sarah Thal of the Araxian Federation." The camera widened to show an Araxian officer standing next to the human captain. Behind them, the bridge was staffed by both humans and aliens working together. By order of the newly formed Alliance for Galactic Security, all Vaxari forces are to surrender immediately, Captain White continued. This world will no longer serve as a staging ground for attacks on civilian populations. Commander Nazir stared in shock. Humans fighting alongside Araxians. It was impossible. The Concord would never allow such an alliance. But as he watched more ships emerge from warp, Earth vessels alongside Araxian, Lur, and even Vulture warships, he realized the galaxy had changed forever. The humans had not only survived, they had found new allies. Captain Daniel White studied the battle plans one more time before addressing the mixed group of officers in the briefing room of the EDF Relentless. Human officers sat alongside Araxians, Lur, and Vulture, all united by a common purpose, to strike at the heart of Vaxari military power. "Our target is the Vaxari weapons production facility on Malik II," Daniel explained, pointing to the holographic display. "Intelligence suggests they're developing countermeasures against our micro-jump technology." Commander Sarah Thal of the Araxian Federation leaned forward, her feathered crest rippling with concentration. "The planet has heavy defenses, including an energy shield that covers the entire northern continent." "That's where your ships come in," Daniel replied. "Araxian disruptor technology can create a temporary gap in the shield. We'll need precisely coordinated timing." What had begun as an emergency alliance was quickly becoming something more. In the 2 weeks since the joint fleet had captured the Vaxari staging world, the aliens and humans had been learning to work together, combining their different technologies and tactics into something new. "The Lur ships will provide long-range fire support," continued Daniel, nodding to the aquatic Lur commander. "The Vulture and Earth vessels will form the main attack group. Commander Thal's Araxian ships will create the shield gap and then join the ground assault." As the meeting ended and the officers dispersed to prepare their crews, Sarah approached Daniel privately. "You humans continue to surprise me," she said. "When my government first voted against helping Earth, I agreed with the decision. I thought humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable." Daniel smiled. "And now? Now I see that same unpredictability as your strength. No Vaxari commander can anticipate what humans will do next, because you don't follow conventional military doctrine." As they walked through the corridors of the ship, crew members from different species worked side by side, figuring out how to integrate their systems and procedures. The Concord kept species separated in many ways, Daniel observed. They emphasized differences rather than common goals. Sarah nodded. The older species always claimed it was for stability. Now I wonder if it was to maintain their control. Back on Earth, President Laura Daniels and her cabinet reviewed the latest reports from the front. The combined fleet had won 3 major engagements and liberated 7 human colonies. But the cost had been high. Thousands dead, colonial infrastructure severely damaged, and nearly a quarter of Earth's secret fleet lost. Admiral Winters recommends we push for a decisive victory at Malik II, said Defense Secretary Alan Hoffman. "If we can destroy their weapons facility, the Vaxari will be unable to adapt to our tactics." President Daniels nodded thoughtfully. "And what does Ambassador Baker report from the Concord?" "The Council remains divided," replied the Secretary of State. "The older species condemn our treaty violations, while the younger members are increasingly supportive of our actions. 3 more have indicated they may join our alliance." "And the Vaxari?" "They've withdrawn from all human colonies, but are reinforcing worlds deeper in their territory. Intelligence suggests they're rushing to complete the new weapon systems that could counter our advantages. The president stood and walked to the window, looking out at the rebuilt Washington skyline that had been damaged during the brief Concord-Earth War 20 years ago. A conflict most humans had forgotten, but the government never had. "We won't repeat the mistakes of the past," she said firmly. "Earth trusted the Concord once and paid the price. This new alliance must be built on equal terms, with shared technology and mutual defense at its core." In space, the joint fleet prepared for the assault on Malik II. Daniel and Sarah finalized their attack plan, knowing that the coming battle would test their newfound alliance. "If we succeed," Sarah said, "this will change everything. The Concord can no longer ignore what we've accomplished together." Daniel nodded. "That's what worries the older council species. They preferred humans when we were isolated and dependent on their protection." As the fleet moved into jump position, Daniel looked around the bridge at the mixed crew. Humans working alongside aliens not as subordinates or superiors, but as equals. Whatever happened at Malik II, the galaxy had already changed in ways the Concord never anticipated. "All ships report ready," said his executive officer. "Signal the fleet," Daniel ordered. "We jump in 5 minutes." The battle for Malik II lasted just 6 hours, but those hours changed the galaxy forever. The combined fleet of Earth, Araxian, Lur, and Vulture ships struck with perfect coordination. Araxian disruptors opened a hole in the planetary shield. Earth fighters slipped through using their micro-jump technology. Lur cruisers disabled the orbital defenses, while Vulture transport ships landed troops directly at the weapons facility. When it was over, the Vaxari's most important military research center lay in ruins. Their ability to develop countermeasures against human technology was set back years, perhaps decades. 2 weeks later, Admiral Olivia Winters stood in the grand meeting hall of the EDF Defiance. Across from her sat the Vaxari delegation, led by Supreme Commander Zox himself. His scales were dull with exhaustion and defeat. "The terms are simple," Olivia said calmly. "The Vaxari Empire will withdraw to the borders established before your invasion of human space. All human prisoners will be released immediately. You will pay reparations for the damage to our colonies." Zox's eyes narrowed. "And if we refuse?" "You cannot match our numbers in a prolonged war." "Perhaps not alone," agreed Olivia. "But we are no longer alone." She gestured to the view screen showing the ships outside. Earth vessels alongside those of their new allies. 7 more Concord species had joined what was now being called the Alliance for Galactic Security. "We could push this war into Vaxari territory," Olivia continued. "But we offer peace instead, not out of weakness, but wisdom." After a tense silence, Zox nodded once. "The Vaxari Empire accepts your terms." As the Vaxari delegation departed, Olivia received a message from Earth. The Galactic Concord had officially demanded that Earth disband its fleet and return to Concord oversight. President Daniels had rejected the demand outright, formally withdrawing Earth from the Concord and announcing the new alliance as an independent galactic power. 6 months later, on a bright spring day, Governor Frank Miller stood on a platform in the rebuilt capital of New Montana. Beside him was Major Peter Garcia, now General Garcia, commander of the colony's expanded defense force. Above them, ships from Earth and their alien allies conducted a ceremonial flyover, their shadows racing across the cheering crowd. "Hard to believe how much has changed," Frank said quietly. Peter nodded. "When the Vaxari came, we thought we were finished. Then Earth's warships arrived, and everything changed." In the front row of spectators stood a young girl named Lisa Clark. She had lost her parents in the Vaxari attacks and had been in one of the mountain bunkers during the battle. Now she watched with wide eyes as the sleek ships roared overhead. Earth ships flying alongside Araxian, Lur, Vulture, and vessels from other former Concord species. "I'm going to be a pilot someday," she told the woman beside her. the nurse who had become her guardian after the invasion. The woman smiled. "I believe you will." On the Concord homeworld, Ambassador Susan Baker packed her office for the last time. Earth's embassy was closing as humanity formally ended its membership in the Galactic Concord. As she worked, a message arrived from President Daniels. "The final alliance treaty has been signed by 14 species," the message read. "A new era begins today. Your new posting as Earth's ambassador to the Alliance headquarters on New Montana awaits." "Well done, Susan." Susan smiled as she looked out at the Concord Capitol one last time. The older council species had believed humans would always remain dependent on their protection, grateful for whatever scraps of technology and territory they were allowed. They had seen Earth as just another minor species to be managed and controlled. Instead, humanity had created something new. An alliance of equals built on mutual respect and shared defense, where technology and knowledge flowed freely between members. As Susan left the embassy, she passed the Great Concord Monument with its ancient motto, "Unity through stability." The Alliance had chosen a different path, a different motto, "Strength through diversity." The Vaxari had learned the hard way what happened when they threatened Earth. The Concord was learning now what happened when they abandoned Earth. And across the galaxy, on a dozen worlds, humans looked to the stars not with fear but with hope, knowing they were no longer alone, no longer abandoned. The universe would never be the same again.